Today, we are so happy to be joined with world-renowned spiritual coach, intuitive, and author Bernard Alvarez.
Yeah, so if you don't know Bernard's work, let me tell you a little bit about him. He's a certified Reiki master of 20 years, which is pretty amazing, an ordained minister. He's a doctor of metaphysics, author of the Book of One, and instructor at Gray School, where he teaches classes on ceremonial magic, and was featured in the film Collective Evolution 3, The Shift. He offers personal, intuitive, spiritual mentoring and counseling, which we all could use, that's for sure, as well as courses and workshops on one's higher self, soul's journey, and the path to divine awareness. So with expertise in philosophy, healing, mysticism, and metaphysics, he helps one gain the clarity that they are seeking. And today, we are speaking with Bernard about a very important topic that we had to add to this masterclass: the awakening process, what to expect and how to stay grounded. Because if it's one thing for certain, when Chris and I started embarking on this journey, we had no clue what was going on, and it was a wild ride. So having someone like Bernard to talk about
I
this
shared
topic.
some of those sentiments with Bernard when we spoke over the phone a month or two ago, and just saying how important this topic really is, because I know a lot of people that are viewing this are probably going through or have gone through or possibly will go through a lot of different changes. And some of these changes can be really scary. Some of them can be really weird.
Some can be subtle.
Some can be subtle. So we're going to dive into it all. And
so thanks, Bernard, for coming
thank
on
you for
the
joining us.
class.
Thank you for asking me.
Good.
So, all right, we just gave a whole spiel about us personally, going through the road that we did. So let's talk about this. As humanity does undergo this collective shift, as we're all experiencing, many of us may or may not be aware of the awakening process that's happening within and without us. So what are some common signs that someone is beginning their awakening?
And I am very grateful that you asked me to answer that question. One of the reasons why I got into this work is because of my passion for assisting in the awakening process and those that are going through it. And in my experience, it's fair to say it's very, very different for everyone. I was very lucky where my spiritual awakening happened through a shamanic vision quest. I went through training with a shamanic teacher, and I did the whole vision quest thing. And that kind of threw me for a loop because I wasn't prepared, and I was a little bit too young for that. So in my personal experience, and I'll share what I've heard from other people as well of what we can expect, in my personal experience, the first thing that happens is that we begin to question the story. And I say that with air quotes, the story of who we are, who we were told we're supposed to be, the story of what the world is like, who controls the world, on and on and on. We can go into education, all these other little subcategories. But we begin to question, and we begin to give, how shall we say, attention to that little inkling within us that says, that story is not really true. That story of who I am, that story of who I am supposed to be, doesn't sit right with me. That story of, the government or religion or spirituality, all these things we're supposed to be afraid of or respect without question, we begin to question. And I believe that's where that first little inkling happens. At least I know that's what happened with me. And for some other people, it can be just a spontaneous epiphany. I've had followers and people and viewers and listeners write me just saying, I had this amazing dream. I get it. They have the aha moment. And they just begin this blossoming process. But there's something to be said for all of this, in that blossoming process is literally, when we say awakening, it's the first step. The awakening process is merely the beginning of the peeling away I always, imagine the lotus. I know it's very cliche, but, peeling away the petals of the lotus to get to the core of the essence of who we truly are. Now, with that being said, I want to add also that there is a false awakening. There is a false story that many of us don't really talk about very much. And that false awakening is the other story that we impose upon ourselves. We begin to have that little inkling that we're feeling the stirrings, we're feeling the opening of the heart chakra, I like to think, because the awakening is about the opening of the heart chakra, as well as the psychic awakening, which is the awakening of the pineal gland and getting intuitive and having that third eye moment and experience. And sometimes when we have that experience, we begin to impose and superimpose a new story onto ourselves. And that new story involves the I'm spiritual, so I should act like this. I'm spiritual, I should wear patchouli. I'm spiritual, I should never think about anything negative. I'm spiritual, I'm better than other people. And that is the false awakening that comes from ego, triggered by a very real stirring of spirit. And then all of a sudden, the ego grasps that little stirring and superimposes this new story that we've heard about. Oh, this is how I'm supposed to act. So I feel that it's important that we touch on that as well, because the real awakening is amazing if you just surrender to it and allow yourself to go through the process of those peeling away the layers of the true self down to the authentic self. But it'll be different for everybody. You may have, like I said, epiphanies. You may have that grand spiritual journey experience like I had. You may be visited by transdimensional light entities. You may have newfound psychic ability, or you might just feel a calling that you need to help the world, to help the planet, to help society. And so it comes in many, many different forms, but be open to all of them and trust them.
Bernard, you just hit it right on the head. And I love, just to kind of give a recap here. So this blossoming is this questioning, right?
The catalyst.
The catalyst to get us to this point of awakening. And I want to dive obviously deeper into the awakening process, but what I really want to highlight is this sense of false awakening to begin this conversation and dive a little bit deeper, is that I know for myself on my journey of, maybe it's around words or certain actions or things. Maybe I shouldn't swear because swearing isn't spiritual, or, any bullshit like that. But it's really interesting the way your mind kind of infiltrates this process. And like you mentioned, the ego infiltrates this process. But I think once we can let go, accept, and surrender to it, again, there is this unfoldment. And I want to dive deeper into that surrender of it. So we've surrendered to it. We've gone through all these twists and turns. What are some of, you mentioned some of the things, newfound psychic abilities and things like that, but what are some symptoms possibly that people can be feeling when they're going through such a process?
That's so important. I'm so glad that we're talking about this today, because those symptoms of awakening can be very, how should we say, it can turn you away from moving forward with the awakening process. We're talking physical symptoms, emotional, spiritual, all of the above. And some of the physical symptoms that I myself went through, and many, many people who I have heard from have spoken about the heat getting very hot all of a sudden out of nowhere. And we're not talking about change of life as our hormones change. We're talking teenagers, 20-something, 30-somethings, going through this like overwhelming feeling of heat, tingling in our body, dryness in the mouth, all these other types of physical symptoms, including headaches, including loss of appetite, including overabundance of appetite. So on a physical level, what I see this as is spirit kind of telling our body what it needs and what it needs to do to readjust to this newfound energy that's moving through. Let's let me clarify. The way I look at the awakening process is that the physical body is allowing itself to be a better channel to allow what we call chi, universal life force energy, to move through it. So we're going to find our body wanting to make certain adjustments, whether it be in our sleeping habits. Some people sleep less, some people sleep more. Some people eat less, some people eat more, and you're going to find yourself feeling these symptoms. The headaches are usually from allowing too much of that chi energy to move through. Ours, we like to say the downloads. You know, we feel the download. We're like, oh yeah, I'm getting all this information. I'm getting all this information, but the brain's not quite equipped to allow all this information. So what happens? Our physical body will respond with a headache or sweating or loss of appetite, et cetera, et cetera. Then, of course, we move into emotional. Depression jumps is the top of the list. People become fearful of this newfound intuitive knowledge, this newfound wisdom, this newfound understanding. Going back to that story with the air quotes, the story is no longer real. So this new information is coming through, and we're trying to digest that information. And a symptom of that is beginning to have this like fractured, uh, I don't want to say personality, but a fracture of our identity and who we are on this planet. All the beliefs that we thought we had begin to go out the window. All of our beliefs about ourselves, everything I just spoke about earlier, begin to go out the window, and we begin to lose faith in ourselves and humanity and everything that we've ever been taught. And because of that, we're going to feel some type of depression or anxiety or whatnot. With that being said, some of us are work well with depression and anxiety. That might be our path. That might be a catalyst to open us up. So I'm not saying these are negative things. They are just symptoms. I happen to be a very high energy, manic type person. And I don't mean like bipolar. I just mean I'm very hyper, talk fast, have lots of energy. And that works for me because I need to process that spiritual energy quickly, or I will get those headaches and whatnot. Everyone has their own way, so we have to give ourselves permission to allow these, to find that center. I know hopefully we're going to talk about that, but some of the other symptoms that we may be experiencing, again, the depression, the migraine, I think the most important one is fear. We begin to develop a new relationship with fear. At first, it becomes very overwhelming. Some of the symptoms are, I'm afraid of what's happening to me. I'm afraid of what I'm learning about the world. I'm afraid of what's next. I'm afraid what people are going to think about me. So we all of a sudden we begin to develop this new relationship with fear, and that is a part of the process. Don't worry about it. You will move through it. And from what we're talking about today, hopefully we'll get some tools to work through all of that.
Something that's really sticking out to me when you're talking is how inclusive you're being with the different experiences that people do have. Because I'd also like to touch on the depression, anxiety, and fear part. Having been part of my awakening process, having been a victim of sexual violence to the point of near death, that was one of my breaking open the head, literally with a bottle. I had to have stitches. So it ignited a lot of psychic abilities that had lied dormant since I was a child, just cracked it wide open. And of course, I was healing through the traumatic experience on a physical and mental and emotional level, but I was also dealing with these new psychic abilities, this information, like you were saying, downloads were coming. I was having premonition dreams. It was just like, it was beautiful but terrifying at the same time. And of course, depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress, all of that circles in and out. But I wanted to touch on that for people who are watching this that might have their awakening process come from a traumatic experience as well. And how, like you said, it's not the wrong way, or it's not a negative thing to be depressed or anxious or fearful as this is happening. It's one of our ways of walking through the shadow to emerge into the light. And for myself personally, that's just how it had to happen. And I'm grateful
Yes.
that it did. And grateful that not all of us, you know, we all have our own unique way, like you through the shamanic approach and quests and journeys and all of that. And some of us are, as children, our parents are able to nurture that potential, and we're able to grow and harness that. So what an amazing experience. But so for those viewers who are watching, you are supported in this journey
Oh yeah.
as it gets dark, because it will, and it does, because the awakening process, like you said, the false awakening, we often think it has to be positive all the time, and that is not the truth. And so could you touch a bit on the shadow side of awakening and what that does for us?
Oh, I would love to. And let me say that I'm so grateful that you said a little bit about your story, because in my 20 years of doing this work, the same story seems to come up over and over again. And it is those of us who have gone through the most trauma, have gone through the most, drug addiction, or any type of abuse or whatnot. And there comes a point within the growth of that person that does stimulate that spiritual awakening of, I will not be a victim. I am not going to live this story. Something snaps and we're like, whoa, I get it now. It kind of forces you out of that image of who we are or who we thought we were. Again,
Mhm.
going back to that whole idea of the story. So your question, or the topic that we were just talking about, was about the shadow self. And my, I don't know if you've seen much of my work around YouTube or Facebook or my website, but my tagline is empower the human experience. And the one thing I will say about this whole awakening process, and again, going back to the false awakening, is to remember we're human beings having a spiritual experience. Do not deny the fact that you're angry when you're angry. You don't want to live in it. You don't want to become a victim of anger, but allow it to process through. If you're upset, if you're depressed, allow it to process through. You don't want to live in it. And yes, if we are living in it, maybe we need to have professional help. But usually, once you're on the path, it will process itself and you will learn to move through it. The old cliche, you can't get out of something until you move through something. Many times I've seen people talk about, well, a great example, I'll share a personal story with you. About 3 years ago, my familiar had a cat named Isis, who was with me for 14 years. She ended up with a tumor. I helped her with her tumor using natural remedies. She lasted another 2 years, but eventually I had to put her down. And the moment I put her down, I came home, and all of a sudden I just started bursting out crying. And my housemate at the time said, I thought you didn't believe in death and whatnot. You're supposed to be spiritual. And I
Hmm.
was like, listen, you need to give me permission to grieve, because that is a part of life. I am not here to be Superman. Nobody's here to be Superman or Superwoman. We are going to live the human experience, and we got to give ourselves permission to do that and give each other permission to do that. There is and I forgot to bring my book with me, even though it's behind the screen, if I can get it a little bit later, but there is a passage in that my guide said, be aware that we're all going to school. And if someone falls, if they stumble, that is a lesson for them. And we have absolutely no place to judge. And that includes ourselves. If we fall, if we stumble, if we hurt ourselves, if we hurt other people. Now, of course, I'm Mr. Pacifist. I don't believe in hurting other people and all of that. However, there are those that hurt other people. Do I want them in my life? No, I don't want them in my life. But we have to look at it from the source consciousness or the universal life force outlook, that they're going through their own lesson. And if anything, I feel sorry for people that hurt other people because there's a big lesson coming up. The same thing goes when we hurt and do things that are hurtful for ourselves. Learn how to process grief, learn how to process depression, learn how to process addictions. But you're allowed to curse. I believe it's very healthy. You're allowed to drink occasionally. I believe you're allowed to play and party and have a good time when it's your time, your off time. You're allowed to have diversions. You're allowed to enjoy comedy. You're allowed to enjoy movies, sports, whatever it is that helps you to kick back and relax. However, it's when we get addicted to those things and we begin to identify with those diversions that we stumble. So allow yourself a little of the shadow experience. If we as humans try to push away the shadow, push away our anger, push away our grief, push away our need to be around friends, go out and party, whatever it is that we are feeling drawn to do because we feel that it's not spiritual or we feel that we're beyond it. Well, guess what? If you're feeling that you want to do it, you're not beyond it. If it's unhealthy, take steps to, fix the fact that it's unhealthy and try to do something a little healthier. But if it's not hurting anyone, I go by, the read, harm none, do what you will. Harm none, do what you will. And it's nobody else's business. And enjoy yourself. Be a human being first and foremost. And remember, this is only one chapter, one lifetime of many, many stories to come.
It's a more authentic approach.
Well, it's more authentic, and I can feel the freedom in that. I can feel myself. I'm sure the viewers can feel the same way. It's free, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're letting ourselves go and have that permission. But again, there comes that balance, and you figure it out as you walk this path, right? And I like how you mentioned that in this school, right? And we had Belinda Womack on, who channels the archangels, and she's talking about schoolroom earth, or the angels talk about schoolroom earth. Yeah, we're in school, but we also have some recess, right? So it's
absolutely well said.
We've forgotten the art of play in our seriousness of adulthood sometimes, I think. And then when we compound it with the spiritual awakening process, we put even more pressure on ourselves to be this perfect guru sitting atop the mountain, floating in lotus pose. And it's like, if we were at that point, then there would be no point to be on schoolroom earth.
That's absolutely true.
And we need those people too, and so it's just a part of the collective evolution and where we're going. But
I have a question for him really quickly.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because now, while we're on the topic sort of shadow and darkness,
her specialty.
I love it.
She coaches through that.
I love it. But I have a question that's semi-related on the awakening process. Like Chris had mentioned earlier, there's twists and turns and valleys. And you mentioned how people have to kind of shed their false truths, what they thought was themselves, their masks have to come off. And in that process is a cleansing that often happens. And so what I notice, a lot of like our clients that we work with, suddenly they lose their job. They realize that maybe they're in school and they don't want to do what they went for, or they break up with someone or get broken up with, or suddenly it starts looking like things are falling apart. And then they start asking this question like, what am I doing wrong? And I'm like, but you see, it's exactly precisely what you're doing right. And so I see you smiling, so I want to hear your words on.
Well, I'm smiling because I went through that, and in a very drastic way. Back in 2004, Hurricane Wilma, I ended up, before I did this professionally full-time, I worked in the fashion industry in Miami. So you can imagine what kind of life that was like. And I had a salon in Miami, and Hurricane Wilma wiped it out, and I lost everything. I lost my home, I lost my business, I lost my friends, because I became needed and dependent on them to give me a place to live, give me food. I mean, I literally lost everything from that. And It was the most difficult thing, but I will say that in losing everything, I found what I needed to do. It was like when people go through these type of drastic changes, losing job, losing partner, whatnot, we have to remember that we're opening up space for something new to come in. And a lot of time it is difficult. And you know the cliche, if you're not uncomfortable, it means you're not growing. And there's some type of wisdom to that, even though I don't feel you have to be uncomfortable to grow. But sometimes the universe will grab you up by the scruff of your neck, shake off everything, and place you in a new spot for you to move forward with that particular chapter of the path of your growth and your awakening. I say to those people that are going through it, hold on to it. Hold on to the change. Have, and I don't like to use the word faith, but have the knowledge that the sun will rise tomorrow, that you will wake up tomorrow, that you are going to have new experiences tomorrow, and they can continue to get better and better and better. For me, I speak to my guides, I will pray to the goddess, I will talk to my ancestors, whatever it is, and it gets me through it and it helps me to remember that I'm not alone in all of this. And with that being said, I would like to take this aspect of that and take it one step further onto a global level, in the sense that while we're going through the awakening, let's not forget it's a global awakening. So this so-called karmic world that we're living in, this karmic path that we're on of unfolding and becoming authentic, is also happening to our planet, to society as a whole. Whether we like it or not, we may be individuals, but we're connected to communities, states, countries, provinces, wherever you live, to society. And they're all going through the same thing as a whole. So it's fair to say a lot of what we see going on in the world around us is a part of that birthing process, of that awakening process. So just know you are never alone in this. We're all going through it.
And I'm so glad you mentioned that, because as Sarah likes to say, the pimple has to pop, right?
Yeah.
So all of the
That's what I
shadow
say
stuff,
too. Good one.
all of the shadow stuff, all of the darkness has to show itself, has to come to the surface, because we can't just go from
Keep
stuffing it down to, oh, awakened earth, we're here, everybody's happy, everybody's peaceful. No, the shit has to go and hit the fan.
Yep.
And we have to see it all, we have to acknowledge it all, and we have to accept it all. And once we do that, we then shift into this new paradigm that we're all wanting to see. But it starts again, like we're talking about, on that individual level, but again on the macro, the cosmic level, we are seeing it as well. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Knowing what we don't want is one of the best catalysts of the awakening process. Seeing something you don't want, what makes your soul hurt, again, that process of going through the dark night of the soul, seeing we don't want that, is what catapults us into the next phase, into the next part of our path to authenticity and enlightenment.
So, I'm feeling just so good talking about this. It feels really good. So undoubtedly throughout this process, people start to wake up to their purpose, to their gifts, to what they're here, their voice, what they're here to really bring to the world, and how they're going to serve humanity, right? And so how can they start to maybe come into alignment and use these to their advantage throughout this awakening process?
I wish I knew that answer 20 years ago, but I think I have it now. I feel I have it now. I don't like that term think, but I'll go into that whole language thing in our head in a minute. But however, the idea of learning to apply these tools to our benefit as we're going through the process is something that many of us have this I guess we resent it, like we don't want to be a part of our life, or we, again, going back to that, people are going to look at us crazy if we do this or whatnot. But the key is, if we are going to maneuver along this journey, allow this awakening to happen and continue to peel those petals away, we have to be honest with what our passions are at any given moment. And what I mean by any given moment, it could be one day, it could be 1 year, it could be 5 years, it could be 10 years. There are those of us on the path who are involved. For me, in the beginning, it was about activism, global activism. Save the world, human rights, human rights. And I'm still very much involved in that, but it's not my primary focus. I've known people that were involved in meditation, yoga, the law of attraction, um, everything in the conspiracy world, chemtrails, GMOs, all of these things that we begin to become aware of. And we will be overwhelmed. We will be overwhelmed. Sometimes it's just too much. You have to step away from the computer, put the phone down, turn off the TV, stop allowing all this information to come through, because in the beginning, and this goes to what you're saying, is in the beginning, you are going to have so much information downloaded. You're going to have so many awakenings, so much new understanding, and you're not going to know where to turn and how to apply these tools to benefit yourself and humanity, because you're going to be scattered. Oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. Oh, nature's dying. Oh, look, they're poisoning the water. Oh, look, politicians are corrupt. Oh, look, I can do yoga. Oh, look, I can practice, this. I can practice that. So there's like so much, life becomes a smorgasbord, which is great. It's great. Now we have all of this, all of life's offerings in a whole new way being offered to us. What I say to people is, if you really want to do the best to allow this awakening process and these tools that you're learning along the way to empower you personally and empower, and like you said, save the world. Watch out for that save the world syndrome. I went through that. One thing at a time. Follow your passion. Be true to who you are. What is calling your attention at that moment? Are you concerned about, excuse me, homeless people, hunger? Are you concerned about consciousness? Are you concerned about yoga? Are you concerned about sun gazing? Whatever it is that you're into, be true to yourself and follow that. And just don't be mindless upon the journey. And I think that's the key. Mindfulness might be my bottom line answer, is be mindful of what you're giving your focus and attention to. You're going to want to do everything. You're going to want, it's like waking up like a 12-year-old kid on Christmas Day. You have all these offerings. You can do everything. You can't do everything. You'll burn out, and you won't be able to apply those wonderful tools and gifts that are being offered to you by the universe. So follow your passion and be mindful of what you give your focus and attention to. I'd like to share an anecdote that I share a lot, and I believe I first heard it from, I want to say it was Ram Dass, like 30 years ago on one of his cassettes. That's how old it was. And he said, I forgot where the story is, if it's Sanskrit or whatnot. And he said, there's a story of a small tree, and it's a sapling. It's a small little sapling. And we must put a fence around it, because if not, all the sheep in the meadow will pounce on it and, smash it, and the tree will die and grow. It won't grow. But with the fence around it, it will grow, it will spread, and it will provide shade for many. For me, what that means is be vigilant as to what you give your focus and attention to, especially in the beginning. Be aware of what you're giving your focus and attention to. Now, that carries on throughout our journey, but very much so in the beginning. If you really want to feel the benefits of all of this, be aware of what you're putting in your body, be aware of what you're looking at, be aware of what you're listening to, be aware of what you're feeling, be aware of what you're seeing, be aware of the energy you're surrounding yourself with. And is it something that you like? Start being aware if that's what you like. I remember back in the early days, for me, I got involved in this I don't want to say mainstream, but on a more global level in the mid 2000s. And I don't know if I had spoken it with you about, we had this like moment on Earth where like we had this, like the second chapter of the mass awakening, and all of a sudden, because of the internet, everybody was waking up. We had the light worker movement. We had, the activist movement, all like coming together online with, millions of people around the world. And I remember being involved with different organizations and seeing them talk about things that were just pointing at the negative. And don't get me wrong, we have to be and expose the negative. We have to be aware of the negative. We cannot deny the negative exists. But it was in the way that they were responding to the negative with more negative.
Hmm.
And when you find yourself responding to the negative with negative, maybe just be mindful of how it's making you feel, back off a little bit and say, okay, I'll reapproach that when I can look at it from a more grounded state of mind and be able to actually do something about that.
Hmm.
So this vigilance that you speak of, this following your excitement, these are wonderful tools to not only help us use our gifts and our talents in the world, but also to help us stay grounded. So what are some other ways that you would recommend people stay grounded during this awakening process, and whether they've just started or are 50 years in the making? What would you suggest?
I have a blanket answer for that, and it is mindfulness. However, in the beginning, I'm not going to deny it can be a little difficult to stay grounded. The reality of it is that you are going to feel like you're going through, I don't know, one of those water flume rides at Disney World or something. The stream carries you. And I love Abraham Hicks in the way that she describes the stream philosophy. And if anyone hasn't seen that, please check that out. But especially in the beginning, when we are going through that stream of profound awakenings, profound emotion, profound sensations, and just eating up all this stuff, if you try to swim, and I'm just kind of paraphrasing her right here, if you try to swim upstream, you're going to tire yourself out. So it's kind of best to kind of go with the flow, let it go. If you're feeling anxiety, you're going to feel anxiety. You need to deal with it. You have to allow yourself to deal with it, but know that you will return to center. Know that this moment is not going to last forever. That sensation is not going to last forever. Now, how do we do that? I believe in just breathing. Oop. Using our breath, focusing on our breath. I find that many people feel that, meditation is this airy fairy Tibetan Buddhist Tibetan monk on a mountain type, practice. And the reality of it is that meditation is just taking a deep breath, breathing into your nose, filling your belly, and just allowing your mind to slow down. And again, just taking a break. Take a break, catch yourself, take a break, take a breath. Catch yourself, take a break, take a breath. Catch yourself, take a break, take a breath. And eventually you'll come to create your own practice and allow yourself to create your own practice. Yes, it's important to learn the foundation of all these great traditions and practices, but eventually you will allow yourself to do what works for you. You don't have to be perfect at everything you read and see on the internet.
And it's it's simplicity, really, what it comes down to. And that's exactly, talking about the breath. We had Kathleen Booker on, who's a master breathwork practitioner and coach and all of that, and she was wonderful and gave tips on breathing and all of that. But yeah, I mean, I love how we just boil it down to simplicity. I think speaking probably for Sarah and I, we both are very avid readers and dive into so many subjects and so many things. And, sometimes that, I guess, mind gets a little scattered, but at the same time, the curiosity and the excitement drives us. And then we use our intuition to really tap into the things that,
and discern what resonates
and discern what
doesn't
resonates.
resonate.
Exactly. So
But one of my favorite words, discernment. Apply that every day,
Mhm.
especially during the process.
And
Yep.
sometimes, like you said, take a break. I want to just give a brief, quick example of what take a break might look like, because, he's he gets focused and he goes, and he's grounded, and I'm like, in the air, in the clouds. I could float away. And so we balance each other really well there. But like when we conceived our child and I started the pregnancy process, it got really intense for me on a personal level. And so my spiritual component of my life, which it's all spiritual, nothing separate from that, I want to say that, but this, the meditating and the yoga and all the things that I might have normally been doing wasn't resonating with me anymore. Instead, I was embracing the need to just lay on the couch and eat saltine crackers and peanut butter because I couldn't stomach my healthy salads and everything else. And at first it was so hard for me to surrender into the experience of not being spiritual enough, right? Feeling that I wasn't nurturing myself the way that I would have before. And I realized that was part of my awakening. It all is part of my awakening. The need to take a break from doing and just being, even though it doesn't include meditating, I put away my tarot cards. I put away my oracle cards. I stopped doing readings for people. I stopped coaching for a while because I needed that break to just exist. And to me, that break is still a crucial component of that awakening.
And I think can be still implemented amongst the
Mm-hmm.
doing, right? And that's what she's taught me
Mm-hmm.
as well. So I'm really appreciate you sharing that. I think that's really important for people to listen to, especially people that maybe are like me with very mission driven focus and ambition and all of that. But I think those lessons I took to heart as well, just seeing you in that state and
binge watching Netflix, eating
giving
my
myself
crackers,
the permission to
pulling the pregnancy card,
and giving myself permission to do that. And now I spend, there's days on a Sunday I'll watch a football game, right? And it's and I used to be against that during my original part of my awakening. I can't watch it. I can't do this. This isn't spirit, like we talked about this already. But it's interesting how it all comes back around. It's the wheel of life, right?
So even the false awakening is part of the awakening, if you're
Yes,
willing
it
to.
is. Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things I hear you saying, and I just want to reiterate on that, and one of the practices that I do in all of this and staying grounded, I do something called Me Day. I pick one day a week. I don't take clients. I work on 5 different projects a week, and I don't answer email. I won't go on social media, and I Netflix, or now Disney Plus I'm into, but and just I allow myself to just lay on the couch and order Postmates and just binge watch movies or TV shows all day, or go to the park, or go out drinking with my friends, or whatever it is I feel like doing that day. But that's me day. That's me day. That's the time I give myself to whether it's explore my shadow self, explore my binging or drinking, or whatever it is that it is. That's where I give myself permission to not have to be, because I am very type A driven, like you were explaining. I'm like, I live off my schedule and I have to be here at 2:00 and that's not on my schedule. I can't do it, but I schedule me days. So I highly recommend people taking me days, if not me time. I used to have clients that say to me, "Oh, well, I have 5 children. How am I going to do a me day or whatnot?" I said, "Well, hide yourself in the closet with a pack of cigarettes and some Doritos, lock the door for 15 minutes and take me time. Take time, make time to have your time somehow, some way. And if you really, really want to feel good about yourself, you'll make it a priority."
Well, and the beautiful thing about that is that you can then come back to your projects that you have going on in such a more focused way and feeling refreshed, right? And rejuvenated, ready to take on whatever it is you're taking on. So, oh man, I love it. This has been such a fun conversation. I really enjoyed this a lot. I really enjoy this a lot. And we'll have to bring you on our podcast as well for even deeper dive. We'll just go down the rabbit hole on some stuff. So to wrap this up, what updates do you have? What things do you have going on right now? Moving into 2020, winter, spring, summer, what's going on with you? And yeah, feel free to share.
It's always changing and evolving. But right now I'm very happy to say that my new fourth edition of my book is out. Can I take 20 seconds? Not even 5 seconds. Give me
Go
one
for
second.
it.
Please do. We'll just edit it.
I had it set aside and I totally forgot to bring it with me in my little booth here. The reason why is I'm really proud of the cover because I actually designed the cover myself. It's the fourth edition of the Book of One.
Wow.
And what the Book of One, the updated version, actually, let me explain. The Book of One talks and shares a very intimate look at what I went through in that shamanic vision quest. And not only that, but a look at how this book was created. The entire book is channeled from the beings that I met during my vision quest, and the updated version offers new exercises and information from my guides that I've been documenting over the last couple of years. So I figured I might as well throw it into this new. I was going to write a whole new book, and I was like, I don't have time. We'll update the old book. So we added that into that. Again, it's the Book of One. You can get it on Kindle, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, whatever. But I think it's only available online in Barnes & Noble and Amazon. As well, I just redid my website. I'm really proud of that. It looks fantastic. I'm very grateful to everyone to put in the energy into helping me design it. Within redesigning the website, we were talking about when people are awakening, what do they need or what might they be looking for? We have started an online community there as well. I thought that the work that I started doing online was, I don't know how far back you researched me, but back in the 2000s, I was the executive director for the Global Illumination Council, which we were a community of people that were awakening. We had 45,000 members.
Wow.
And that's what started this whole journey for me on a global scale. And not that I missed it, but I felt that a lot of people were asking for that again. Like, I feel like we're coming up on another wave of, I don't know if you want to call them rainbow children, crystal children. People are awakening again. And so we're going into another phase of that. And I wanted to have that available for people that were seeking to meet other people that were going through the same thing. So we did start a community there. And I just continue my work. I work with several nonprofits. The local one I work here, working with the LGBT rights. We're about to have our annual fundraiser, which I help organize and lead that. And it goes on and on. Facebook continues to grow, and my Just Bernard show is back. I put that on the back burner for a little while. So my regular weekly show is back, the Just Bernard show. I didn't do it to date. You guys are the first ones with my new computer. I had to put my computer together.
Nice.
And that's really about it. I'm at bernardalvarez.com, and you can find me on Facebook, where we actually have a community of over 250,000 people on Facebook. So you can meet other people, but they're a little bit more cantankerous there, I find. You know, Facebook is much more cantankerous, which is why I figured, oh, let's start one over here on my website for people that are not so ornery. But or have that, I call it Facebook reactive syndrome. You know, they react to something and they just can't let it go.
Yes.
But and that's another thing. Learn. I always say, SOB, scroll on by. Learn to scroll on by. Don't take it personal. Don't let social media make you too crazy.
Oh my goodness.
I think that's about it. I'm looking forward to what 2020 has to offer. I love the numerology aspect of it, at least the flow of the numbers 2020. And we'll see what the new year has to bring us. And I look forward to the next wave of everybody who is awakening and bringing this information forth.
Wonderful. Well,
Such
again,
exciting work you're doing, Bernard. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we look forward to having a deeper conversation at some other point via our podcast and other.
I love that.
Thank you. Awesome.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.